Welcome back, everybody. Just about 34 minutes after the hour. And as promised before the break, our last and final interview, at least for now. I'm not going to say forever because I know myself and that wouldn't be true. We turn our attention now, as we have the last couple of weeks at this time, to Jonathan Simon. Jonathan is author of the book, as you know by now, Code Red. And it is a fascinating book. In fact, the entire title is Code Red: Computerized Election Theft and a New American Century. Jonathan, first of all, I know you're traveling. I know you're on the West Coast, so I appreciate you getting up early, and I want to welcome you back to the show.
Thanks, Tony. It's a beautiful day here in Palo Alto, so I'm happy to be up and happy to be with you.
Well, I appreciate that. Let me start with just a comment, and then I do want to talk about solutions because we really haven't had a chance to do that. And there may not be solutions, but I don't believe that that's true. Jonathan, I had said that the godfather of all the issues that we care about really is in fixing this part of the election process. And you had shared a story last week about speaking somewhere where there were incredibly intelligent and bright people that all had their advocacy issues, their activism, and their point of view. And yet they were basically yawning at your issue as if it had nothing to do with what they wanted to see accomplished. I found that astounding. And I'm not the only one that did. There were many others that I heard from that just couldn't believe that intelligent, well-bred, well-reasoned people just didn't get it. But they didn't, did they?
No, and it certainly wasn't the first time, Tony. I mean, this has been a pretty familiar experience, and we there's a point at which you kind of want to stop complaining about, well, people aren't listening to us, blah blah blah, because it begins to sound whiny. But the reality is that in many cases people are not focused on this issue, and they don't get what I call the hole in the bucket phenomenon, which is, they are trying to fill a bucket with many, many good initiatives and changes and reforms and ideas, and ranging from getting rid of the Electoral College to, in terms of electoral politics, doing something about big money, et cetera, and all the other issues of what is now, sort of identity politics, saving the environment in all the various aspects of that, and income redistribution, et cetera, and these are all very, very, very sound ideas and important ideas. But if you throw them into a bucket with a hole at the bottom, you're going to be perennially disappointed, and I feel that is largely what's going on, because with the exception of a few anarchists or revolutionaries who believe that the electoral process will not serve us, and that really what we need to do is storm the Bastille, and good luck with that. But aside from that small group, I mean, everybody else at some point has to acknowledge that their agenda comes down to elections and electoral results. We live in a representative democracy, and who our representatives are is crucial. And so, to not grasp that the electoral process itself is capable of being subverted, and the evidence is pretty strong, has been subverted and continues to be subverted in the most fundamental of ways, which is the actual vote counting process being manipulated on these computers that we trust, have taken on faith, in an age where we understand now that you can't take computers on faith. I mean, every day shows a new reason why computers are hackable, and the programming of computers is beyond observability. The person on the outside looking in can't really tell what's going on in the code in the computers and on these memory cards. And nonetheless, we've just sort of been sold this in a kind of blitzkrieg after the Help America Vote Act came in, and we've accepted it whole hog. And as long as we continue to do that and see these absolutely bizarre and really, in many cases, unfathomable electoral results when you look at both the small picture individually one by one and the big picture of the overall results of an election like 2014 election. We're going to be very, very frustrated, and the people who are promoting progressive causes, want to see a less imbalanced, less cavalier from an environmental standpoint, a less greedy world, and a fairer world, are going to be very, very disappointed in the results that they get. And it is very frustrating from our standpoint not to have been successful for the most part in engaging those people in understanding that this is a core issue, as you say, the godfather of issues, and unless we get this fixed, they're going to, much of their energy is going to be wasted.
Well, and so it goes back to really the purpose of our third interview on the book Code Red, which is, what's the fix? How do we fix this? How do we guarantee that our votes count? At what level, what decibel level do we have to speak for those in power to hear us and actually make change? And I shared with you, I believe it was in our first interview, that I was on the air when Iraqis voted for the first time, and people were making fun of the fingerprint in the blue ink, and that's how they voted. And I thought, why are you making fun of this? This is verifiable. It's accountable. It's transparent. They need to be counted by hand. This to me looks like the pristine way to do it, and you folks are laughing at it. Well, I don't know that that's the answer, but there has to be one, Jonathan Simon. There just has to be.
Well, we'd like to think so. There are many problems here. I mean, if you talk about solutions, if you're going to go out and march in the streets or storm the Bastille or go to your representative or go to election administrators, you have to have a plan. And there are several problems here, and one is that the hand counting of ballots or thumb printing or any of those things that strike modern Westerners, modern Americans as ridiculously Luddite. And we've just sort of accepted that convenience and speed and the sort of clean lines of computerized life, it's a long way from the pioneer's hut, as I put it in Code Red, or the primordial night. We've come so far, and we believe that that's all to the good. That concept needs to be revisited because there may be, and there are, certain areas in which doing it the old-fashioned way or doing it more slowly or doing it more meticulously really are both appropriate and necessary, and this is one of them. So, whether it turns out to be hand counting or it turns out to be a well-designed and scrupulously executed audit protocol, these are in a sort of combat with the speed and convenience ethos, with this idea that we have to have our results by 10 p.m. so everybody can go to bed knowing where our country is going, and just sort of sit back and be told everything by the networks, and have everything happen in a flash. If we want that kind of speed, we really do have to rely on computers, and if we rely on computers, we're opening the process to manipulation. So that has to be understood. The other thing that has to be understood is that the Democrats are not the victims here. They may lose some elections that they otherwise would have won. They may be disempowered as a majority party, but the real victims here are the public, are the disenfranchised and falsely represented public of voters, citizens and voters. And that is an important distinction because when we look for solutions, the tendency is always to, again, go inside the Beltway or go inside the State House and think, well, why aren't the Democrats doing something about this? Why doesn't the media do something about this? And we have to understand, the Democrats are corporatized. The media is corporatized. This fits their agenda very, very well, this control. If there's one thing that we've learned, the powers that be, pretty much across the board, what they distrust is the chaos of democracy, the chaos of Jim Hightower, the chaos of people actually standing up, and you never know what they're going to demand next, et cetera, et cetera. So they want control and they want dominion, and they neither party and nor the corporate media wants to surrender that in the form of empowering the people in their electoral process, bringing about more transparency, shining a light on things that they much rather just sort of keep inside a closed room. So this has got to come from the public. This has to come from public pressure, and organizing the public in an age of, bread and circus and great distraction. People are very busy for one thing, with working, many jobs, often more than one job, trying to squeeze in family care as well, whether of elders or children. So they are very occupied. And then if they don't happen to be occupied, they're fed a steady diet of, what I loosely call entertainment, to keep them distracted, whether it's reality TV or video games or whatever it is, internet, surfing. And and then on top of that, there are all these issues out there that seem to be clamoring for attention. So really generating a strong, focal, tenacious public pressure is a tall order, but that's what has to happen. That's why I wrote Code Red. That's why I want people to, not just read Code Red, but if they find it compelling, to distribute Code Red, to spread it. There are the vast majority of Americans may have some suspicions about our vote counting process. As a matter of fact, polls show that they do, but it's very inchoate. And to bring people together, there needs to be communication. There needs to be connection. Whether people assemble physically or they do it through social media, online, there needs to be a real coming together. And then you bring that pressure to the election administrators at the local level. You bring it to the media and to the government. For instance, Elizabeth Drew, I think I might have mentioned this before, but she wrote an otherwise very astute set of 2 articles in the New York Review of Books about the dangers of our election coming up in 2016. And, of course, she touches upon and gives a lot of ink to pretty much everything: gerrymandering, big money, voter suppression, et cetera, all these problems, and not a single word about the vote counting, the concealed, vote counting process itself. So by implication there's nothing to worry about. After all, she catalogs everything else and will not touch this. And that is not an aberration. That is absolutely typical. Well, when an article like that comes out, we need to have a search and response team that flags it. People who, use Google for good, and it comes up and emails go out to hundreds, thousands, even more people who, are told what this article said and shown a few bullet points about why this is such a dangerous misrepresentation of reality, and encouraged to and motivated to respond, so that the New York Review of Books and Elizabeth Drew get a flood of response. And that's the only way that the powers that be will even be aware that there is this pressure and there is this tenacity out there. And beyond that, we really need to be, and some people, I guess, cover your ears. We need to be prepared for what is, I guess today may be a dirty word, but was once the pride of our democracy, and that's civil disobedience. And the form of that could be going down to an election precinct after the ballots are counted, forming a ring around one of the optical scanners and saying, we're not moving until you open that optical scanner and count these ballots in public. A very nonviolent act. A lot less violent than, let's say, the Boston Tea Party, but something like that, an OpScan party, where we say those are our ballots. Those are not Diebold's or Dominion's ballots. They're not the state's ballots. They're the voters' ballots. and we have the right. Observable count is a voting right, and we have the right to see the count of those ballots. And so something like that has a lot of dramatic import, is nonviolent, probably would result in arrest for trespass or whatever the misdemeanor is. But, if we're not willing to go there as a group and as a community, then we're probably not going to be pushing hard enough to make any change, because the inertias are absolutely enormous here. And the fait accompli is a very daunting one. And so that's the kind of public gathering and connection and action that we're going to need if we're going to change this system.
All right, let's go to the phones and welcome Bruce to the program. Bruce, as always, appreciate you listening. I know you've got a question and or comment for Jonathan.
Well, I just, I want to make sure that people, I know your show is based in Michigan, but you're on the internet now, so people, I'm sure, all over the country are listening to you now. But at least in Michigan, I want to let your listeners know and that there is an organization that I'm part of, the Michigan Election Reform Alliance, MichiganElectionReformAlliance.org. And we've been on this case for several years, and we are, trying to do something about it here in Michigan. In fact, I had Tim Grimal, who I know is on your show often. We had him out for dinner last week, and kind of woke him up to this idea that something needs to be done. And we showed him the other thing. I think,
Bruce, let me just interrupt you for a moment. Jonathan, Tim Grimal is the Democratic House leader in the State House of Representatives, so you know where Bruce is referenced. Go ahead, Bruce.
Thank you.
And, we gave him a copy of your book, Jonathan. We gave him a copy to take back and give to a Republican colleague, because we want to make sure that this is a bipartisan effort to make sure that we at least start to address the issues that you're talking about. And we sat Tim down in front of my television set in my house, and we showed him, I'm hoping you're familiar with this movie, Hacking Democracy. It was a documentary on HBO. And we showed him the last 22 minutes of that film. Where Harry Hursty performs a hack on an optical scan machine, where his hack, he puts a program onto a memory card. It's an executable program, and they prove that the election, with known results, they did this small election with 8 votes, but the program on his memory card actually flipped the results from 6-2 one way to 7-1 the other way. And I don't know what more proof, because we vote on optical scan machines all over the state of Michigan. That's the only method of voting we use in Michigan. So, and I don't know what else we need to do to prove to people that these elections can be manipulated through the computers that, we use all over the country.
Well, Bruce, thank you for your call. Jonathan, I'll let you go ahead and respond to that.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce. And, I should say that Michigan is well ahead of the game. Michigan is one of the shining places. California is. They're certainly trying in Wisconsin, but they're up against some major obstacles in Scott Walker and company. So there are these places, where action has been undertaken, and those are the examples we need to follow. And that's the idea. There are election administrators here and there, whether it's at the county level or even the state level, who are responsive. We have Virginia Martin in New York, who with her Columbia County, New York, who with her Republican counterpart, they actually pull the ballots out of the OpScan and count them by hand after the election, after the OpScan has done the initial count. That is unique as far as I understand it in this country. Need more Virginia Martins, need to spread that model and spread that story. Beyond that, somebody was just telling me about, there was this ad campaign, this Twitter campaign that had to do with the ads that were coming up in the Super Bowl, and they were very insensitive to women apparently. And this woman whose name I don't remember came up with the hashtag #NotBuyingIt campaign. And when these ads would come up in the Super Bowl, there would be this storm of tweets not buying it. And, the next Super Bowl, the ads had changed. The corporations responded, and they looked at the ads, and they had taken out all this gender insensitivity and near abuse in these ads because there was such a huge response via Twitter. So, one could conceive of an election night response along those lines, a tweet storm of something like "Show us our votes" or something along those lines, that coupled with this more place by place and local approach, you have a national initiative, and it begins to have synergy, in spreading the awareness and putting the pressure on. I mean, I still think at some point it comes down to some "we will not be moved" type of actual risk that must be taken to move the system. But in order to even make that risk have a context and make sense, all this other stuff has to be done in, as an antecedent, and that includes, things like distributing and reading Code Red, which Bruce has said they are doing, and working with organizations. There, many of the election integrity organizations have experienced a great deal of frustration, and some of them are rather dormant, but there are some that are still alive and kicking. The NEIC, National Election Integrity Coalition. There's a new one forming, People Demanding Action. My own organization, Election Defense Alliance. So there are places with websites, with headquarters, that can help organize this campaign. But it really does come down to people being willing to set aside the time, invest the energy with real tenacity. And, we see that in some people. There are a shout out to Arlene Montemurano in Maryland, who has been an absolute bulldog in terms of taking my book and other information and bringing it to the attention of influential people in her state and in Washington, has really, taken this on as a campaign. And 50 or 100 Arlenes or Bruces can go a long way, because it spreads. There is a kind of a pathway to critical mass here. And that's what we really needed. It does have to come from the people. I think for too long we really did think, well, you could petition the Lord with prayer, and the powers that be, will get it and they'll respond, just because it makes so much sense, because you show them hacking democracy or what, any of these, all this evidence and information. But really, the inertia there is very great, and so it takes correspondingly a very great amassing of public pressure along the lines of the civil rights movement, along the lines of the gender rights movement, along the lines of the gay rights movement. And these movements haven't, they didn't just kind of spring from the hip. They took a lot of groundwork in building up, but once the momentum got going, and once the media recognized that these were forces to be reckoned with, they were able to take off and achieve great changes. And we are going to have to take some risk. We are going to have to bang very hard on that window. And I just, why not start? We got to start somewhere, and now is the time. So devoting some time and energy and having a sort of discipline about it, to stay with it, to be determined, to be tenacious, to recognize how important this is, and to do this as a duty and a care for our democracy is what I hope will happen now.
Well, I've got to tell you, I've enjoyed the last 3 weeks a great deal. I, again, want to thank you for getting up early on a business trip and joining us this morning to continue to have this conversation. Although this is the last of 3, as I said at the very top of the interview, it isn't the last one. I can promise you that. I could still take you another 3 or 4 weeks and not get to it all. Code Red is the name of the book. I really do want to highly recommend it. The website is codered2014.com. That's codered2014.com. We have placed a link to the website on both the Facebook pages and on Twitter. And so go click through, get a copy, buy one for a legislator, and let's